In this video, I really want to talk about the best lures to use in water temps between about 40 and 55 degrees. Now, I know that that's kind of an awkward range, but to me, that specific temperature range is what I would consider to be like your true late fall, early winter water temps. So it just kind of depends on where you live. You know, if you live up in the northern part of the country, you're already maybe getting into some like ice. If you live down south, the coldest water you may see all year may be around 55. So in the coldest weather months, these are some of the best baits to use. Now, before we get into those baits, this video is brought to you by Fin Fishing Apparel. And right now over at Fin Fishing, I am running all the Black Friday sales. So I have a lot of items that are 20% off, including the USA made sun shirts. Some items are even 30% off, like the bass hats. And I obviously have the new duck pants in, the new duck shorts. Like I have a lot of different products. They're all on sale. Also, for every dollar that is spent right now over at Fin Fishing, from now until the very end of the year, I am doing a big contest where I'm giving away a $150 arc reel, $50 glide bait, and over $2,000 Humminbird Solix 12 unit. Also giving away a fishing trip with myself. So I'm going to leave some links down below in the description. Shopping at Fin Fishing is truly the best way to help support this channel, and I greatly appreciate all of you who have done so. All right, let's talk about this water temp, and let's talk about these lures. Now, in my opinion, one of the best baits to go out there and throw and simply cover a lot of water with during this time of the year is a crankbait of some sort. A crankbait becomes my absolute best friend in really cold water temps. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, a number of years ago, I thought that there was kind of a water temperature where crankbaits would stop working because these lures move fairly fast in the water column. And so I kind of thought originally like there was a water temp where the bass would just stop biting them because they moved too fast. Now, over the years, I figured out that a crankbait will work in some of the coldest water temps that you will find. Now, the big thing here, and this is a little bit hard for me to explain, but I typically am going to use smaller, more subtle, and silent and flat crankbaits. Like that's the deal. For example, we talk a lot about the Rapala DT6, DT8. DT10 is about the biggest one that I will use in really cold water. And the reason that I tend to stick to the smaller crankbaits is because I just don't want to overdo it for the bass. Like a crankbait, for example, even like a 5XD, like this bait to me, it has too much action in really cold water to catch a ton of bass. Now, I know that someone's going to be on here being like, dude, I smashed them in 45-degree water on a 5XD, which I could see happening. But typically, to me, the more subtle crankbaits are the best ones. And one of my favorite ones over the last couple of years has really been the Berkley Fritz side. The reason being is that I used to use a Shad Rap a lot, and a Shad Rap is a really good bait in cold water, right? It's a Rapala Shad Rap. I don't have any on the wall here because they're all in my boxes in the boat, but a Shad Rap is a really good bait, but it is a pain to throw. It's very light. It's kind of long, and when you're dealing with windy conditions out there, it really wants to like do this stupid, if you fish a Shad Rap, you know, it has that stupid little like flutter to it at times. So really when you fish a Shad Rap, you got to throw it on bait or spinning rod, which is fine. You can do that and get away with it and be fine. And you can catch a ton of fish. Like there's no joke. It's no joke that a Shad Rap is a great bait, but a Fritz side has really taken the place for a Shad Rap to me, because to me, it has a very similar action, but yet this bait is just a lot easier to throw. Like the way that it is weighted, I can actually throw it on a bait caster, even this small one. This is the smallest one they make, I believe, which is the Fritz side 5 Junior. They have a number of different sized Fritz sides out there, a number of different ones that run to different depths. And this to me is one of the best baits that has really taken the place of the Shad Rap for me. Now, again, Shad Rap is going to work great. I will say that a Shad Rap on like 8-pound test, I believe it's the Shad Rap 7, that one gets pretty deep. It's one of the ones that will get really deep, which is really good for cold water. But Crankbaits are absolutely a great way. The one thing to remember about fishing a crankbait during cold weather months is to not rip these baits in. And I like to do a very slow, not only a slow cadence, but I also will just pause that bait. So a lot of times I'm casting that bait out, I'm reeling it in, and a lot of times I'll just kind of sweep the rod and then let that thing kind of flutter slightly up and then just kind of start reeling again, sweep the rod. That is a really good cadence for me that has worked a ton. All right, let's talk about bait number 2. That is one of the best baits to use in 40 and 50 degree water, which is a jerkbait. A jerkbait is a great bait to use. It works in ponds, rivers, lakes. It is one of the best cold water baits that we have. For a number of years, it seemed like everybody only used them in cold water, but now people know how well they work even in the dead of summer. But in cold water, they are one of the best baits because they are one of the only baits that really mimic that dying shad type action. Like if you think of all the different baits that we have out there on the market, if you guys have ever seen, for example, like a threadfin shad dying in the water, how it just kind of does this weird motion, it'll kind of pause and hang. That is what this thing really represents. And that is why it is so effective in cold water. Now, again, subtle. I do like things that are a little bit more subtle in cold weather, especially when you get into really cold weather. So just keep that in mind when it comes to working the bait. When I am fishing a jerkbait in cold water, I'm not hammering that thing when I'm bringing it back to the boat. It's more of a light tap. I'm just kind of popping it and then letting it sit there for about 2 to 5 seconds at most. And then I continue on with my cadence. Now, the one thing that I will say with a jerkbait, I talked about this in several different videos, do not forget that that upwards motion every now and then is a really, really big deal. And so sometimes when I'm working a jerkbait, about 2 times on a cast, I'll pop it up 2 or 3 times, like upwards instead of to the side. And it gets that bait going up, up, up like that. And sometimes that bait going away from a bass, even if you don't know it's there, is a big deal at them coming up and getting it. So a jerkbait is a great bait. You know, I like the Vision 110s. I really like the Stunnas. The Stunna Plus One is the bait that I probably fish the most. I have a ton of confidence in this bait. It is a really good one. The next bait is one that is a little bit controversial, but it is such a good cold water bait, and that's an A-rig. It's an Alabama rig. I have been to lakes before where one of the only baits that they will hit in kind of this water temp is an Alabama rig. Like you can fish crankbaits, like we talked about, jerkbaits. And I don't know if it's that the fish have seen too many of them, or it's that an Alabama rig just really kind of like hits on a certain part of a bass's brain that like makes them want to commit to it. But in cold water, again, between about 40 and 55, it is one of the best baits that we can throw. And it catches a lot of fish. Now, for years, I did all the fishing without forward-facing sonar. So again, this is something you could throw it on a pond. I have thrown A-rigs in ponds and caught fish. Even if there's not shad in ponds, like there's still bluegill that were clustered together. And again, there's something about an Alabama rig that it causes an innate reaction in a bass. When they see all this conglomerate of baits out there, it just causes something in their body that they can't control. Like they have to go up there and inspect it. And so it is a really great bait in cold water. It's a little bit controversial because some people don't like it. Also, don't forget to check out your rules. There's a lot of different rules when it comes to Alabama rigs per state. You know, Ohio, you're only allowed to use 3 hooks. There's some states where you can only use 1 hook. There's some states where you can use 5 hooks. So just really be cautious of that. Make sure you look up the rules. I don't want you guys breaking rules and blaming me for sure. All right, so all those baits, if you guys didn't notice, are kind of moving baits that you're going to use a lot through the to kind of find fish. Now, once you find fish, there's 2 baits that I pick up the most in cold water, with one being a good old jig. A simple jig with a chunk style trailer is a great bait in cold water. Like it just is, it catches them. A jig is a great bait year round. The biggest thing that I like in a jig in colder water is I like something that has a fairly slow fall rate. So a lot of times I'm going to use like a 1/4 ounce, A lot of times maybe a 3/8 ounce at max, especially when I'm like hopping a jig. You know, one of my favorite techniques to use during this water temperature is by targeting creek channel swing banks. And when I'm fishing a creek channel swing, I'm going to cast the bait up into like a foot of water, and I'm just going to kind of lift it up and let it fall down. So in that situation, I like a really light jig because a bass are still going to hit that bait on the fall. Now, if you are fishing offshore structure, where you might be fishing a rock pile in 30 foot of water, where you're not really hopping the bait, you're more or less dragging the bait. In that situation, I still think that the lightest bait you can get away with, the more bites that you will get, but you might have to use a 3/4 ounce, a 5/8 ounce jig just to get that bait down there into main contact with the bottom. So long story short, the lightest jig that you can get away with, the best, the better. Also, don't forget, it's a chunk style trailer in this water degree temperatures. You can use a crawl style trailer, but they tend to have a little bit too much action for a bass in cold water. I just get more bites off a chunk style trailer. And also when it comes to baits like this, I think scent is, what's the word I'm looking for? Scent is even that much more important in cold water than in warm water, in my opinion, because you will see a lot of these fish will kind of get up on a bait and they will follow it for a little while. And so if they're following it and all of a sudden they get a whiff of some goodness, you know, like for example, bait fuel with amino acids is something that I use a lot. If they get a whiff of that, it is only another cue for them to be like, all right, this is real. I'm going to go over there and get it. So that's a really, really great bait. Just a simple jig with a chunk style trailer. That's going to get you a lot of bites. Now, the one bait that I throw when I'm like, I can't catch a fish is the very last bait I want to talk about, which is a Ned rig. A good old stupid Ned rig. The reason I call it stupid is because it is stupid. It looks like a turd. But the thing about it, Ned rigs are just an effective bait at getting bites. Like that's what it comes down to. Now, like a jig, one of the best things that you can do with a Ned rig is to try to fish the lightest weight that you can get away with. The lighter the weight is, the more natural that Ned rig looks. Now, again, you want to make sure that you are maintaining bottom contact when it comes to a Ned rig, because you want to be able to feel what's going on. Like if you use too light of a Ned rig and it's a little bit windy of a day, you won't even feel that bite hardly. You're definitely not going to feel the bottom. You're not going to be putting your bait where it needs to be. So just try to get away with the lightest Ned rig that you can get away with. Another thing when it comes to the Ned rig, and look, I don't have any science behind this. It is just my opinion. But when you go to set the hook on a Ned rig, set the hook upwards. I don't know what it is, but a lot over my life, especially when it comes to dragging Ned rigs, is what I primarily do. I have found that if I do a side set hook set, those are the times where I lose fish on a Ned rig. And I really don't understand it. But when I side set with a Ned rig and a fish comes up and jumps, I'm not saying I lose them a lot, but it seems like the fish that I do lose are always on a side hook set. So I don't really understand that whole concept. It's just a correlation that I've noticed. So when you set the hook on a Ned rig, just set it straight up. Like even if you're dragging it to the side, reel up to that fish, set straight up. I don't know. It's just something that I do. It's something that I have a lot of confidence in. All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check out that fin fishing gear. I'll see you guys tomorrow.